When a neighborhood, Karen decided she could control everyone's mailbox style, things took a bizarre turn. Backed by two fake officers in unmarked cars, she started enforcing imaginary postal laws, handing out threats, warnings, and even fake citations. But when one sharp homeowner started asking the right questions and followed the trail, it led to an unbelievable discovery that exposed the entire operation and flipped the power dynamic overnight. This is the unbelievable story of fake cops, fake rules, and one epic takedown. In a quiet, well-kept neighborhood where residents typically minded their own business, a new controversy began to take shape, this time centered not around fences, lawns, or noise, but around mailboxes. It started subtly with murmurs of non-compliant structures and warnings about upcoming postal regulations. The source of these rumors was soon identified: a longtime resident named Karen, who had appointed herself as the unofficial enforcer of neighborhood standards. Her newest obsession was mailbox uniformity. Karen began spreading the idea that a new federal requirement mandated all mailboxes in the neighborhood conform to a specific design: black, metal, front-facing, with a red flag on the right side and a reflective number label in a precise font. She referred to it as a compliance model and claimed it had been adopted by the local postmaster's office in cooperation with the Community Postal Regulation Initiative. She even cited section numbers and regulatory phrases that sounded legitimate but were unverifiable. Soon after, printed notices began appearing in mailboxes and taped to front doors. The flyers warned homeowners that their current mailboxes were non-compliant and subject to penalty citations. They demanded that residents replace custom boxes, wooden posts, or decorative housings with the approved standard within 14 days. The letters were formatted with a government-style header and included terms like phase, one enforcement pre-citation warning, and postal violation tier system. No official contact information was listed, only a vague email address and a QR code that led to a dead link. The neighborhood was caught off guard. Some thought they had missed an announcement or misunderstood a genuine regulation. Others questioned the validity immediately, noting that postal regulations are federally enforced and typically don't operate through random door-to-door notices. There had been no correspondence from the U.S. Postal Service, no news bulletins, and no outreach from the local post office. The sudden urgency and threat of penalties struck many as suspicious, especially considering there was no homeowners association or any governing body in place to support such a mandate. Despite widespread skepticism, a handful of homeowners, particularly the elderly or those unfamiliar with regulatory procedures, took the notices seriously. Some began removing their mailboxes or shopping for replacements online, fearful of being fined or losing mail service. Karen used this momentum to double down, claiming compliance was rising and that those who didn't follow the rules would be reported. She presented herself as a liaison between the neighborhood and postal authorities, asserting that she had spoken directly with officials to enforce the standard. Karen began marking mailboxes she deemed in violation with blue tape or chalk, using a clipboard to record addresses. Residents noticed her walking the streets during the day, taking photos and writing notes. She even flagged mailboxes with minor cosmetic damage, saying they presented mail security risks and delivery inefficiencies. People with decorated boxes, such as those with seasonal paint, solar lights, or floral holders, were specifically targeted. As confusion spread, so did resistance. A few neighbors started asking questions, both to Karen and directly to the local post office. The responses from postal employees were clear: no such mandate existed. The post office had not issued any notices, had no knowledge of Karen's campaign, and stated definitively that mailbox styles, while subject to general federal guidelines for size and placement, were not required to match or follow any neighborhood standard. As long as boxes were accessible, sturdy, and correctly located, no action would be taken against homeowners. This revelation caused a quiet shift in the neighborhood's mood. While Karen had counted on fear and compliance to carry her narrative, the discovery of her fabricated regulations started to undermine her credibility. Yet, instead of backing down, she doubled her efforts. She claimed that the post office employees were unaware of the upper-level directive and that the mandate came from a special enforcement division operating above the local branch. She promised that enforcement would escalate in coming weeks and advised non-compliant residents to prepare for official visits. This only deepened the sense of unease. For residents who had initially trusted Karen or feared the consequences, the evolving story now appeared increasingly fictional. The language in the notices grew more extreme, referencing vague legal codes, mailbox infractions, and threats of mail suspension, none of which were substantiated by any actual law or postal policy. Attempts to confront Karen or challenge her documents were met with deflection and condescension. She insisted that those who questioned her authority were simply uneducated about postal law or stuck in non-compliant thinking. Her confidence, bordering on delusion, made it difficult for some residents to push back directly. Others began documenting her behavior and collecting copies of every letter and flyer distributed. The mailbox issue, once a small and seemingly absurd concern, was now beginning to divide the neighborhood. Confusion turned into frustration. Trust eroded. Karen's campaign was no longer just a nuisance. It was beginning to look like a coordinated attempt to manipulate the community under the guise of fake regulations and imaginary authority. But just as tensions reached a breaking point, something even stranger happened. Two so-called officers appeared to enforce the very laws Karen had invented. Not long after Karen's self-appointed mailbox campaign reached its peak, the situation escalated with the sudden appearance of two men claiming to be postal enforcement officers. They arrived in unmarked vehicles outfitted with magnetic lights on the dashboard, which they occasionally activated when parking near targeted homes. Dressed in tactical-looking clothing with matching ball caps, the men wore lanyards with laminated badges that appeared official at first glance. The badges bore the title U.S. Postal Compliance Division, a department that doesn't exist under the actual U.S. Postal Service. Their presence created immediate confusion and concern among residents. The men went door to door, referencing Karen's flyers and reinforcing her claims of a federal mandate. They stated they were there to verify compliance, inspect mailboxes, and assist residents in avoiding upcoming fines. Their tone was authoritative but not aggressive, often implying that residents were lucky to receive a warning instead of an official citation. In many cases, they offered pre-filled forms recommending specific mailbox models, complete with brand names and purchase links. The so-called officers also claimed that Karen had been deputized as a neighborhood liaison and that she was assisting their department in executing a compliance sweep in high violation zones. They added pressure by suggesting that failure to follow the recommended changes could result in disrupted mail delivery, added postal fees, or referral to federal inspection. Several residents, intimidated by their formal tone and apparent coordination with Karen, began making plans to replace their mailboxes, unsure whether the consequences were real or not. The legitimacy of the operation began to unravel when inconsistencies emerged. Their vehicles had no government plates, the badges lacked federal insignia, and the men refused to provide full names or direct contact information. Attempts to verify their identity through local postal authorities failed, with USPS representatives confirming no enforcement agents had been dispatched to the area. Still, the mere presence of uniformed-looking individuals gave Karen's claims an artificial sense of credibility, which she leveraged to expand her influence. What had started as a false policy now appeared backed by people pretending to be government agents, deepening the deception and setting the stage for a major confrontation. As the fake enforcement campaign gained momentum, one homeowner, unconvinced by the growing absurdity, decided to push back. This resident began by closely reviewing the flyers, badges, and verbal claims made by Karen and the so-called postal enforcement officers. A quick review of the U.S. Postal Service website confirmed what many had suspected: no such department existed, and no mandate regarding mailbox uniformity had been issued. The only federal requirements related to mailboxes involved size, height, and basic accessibility, none of which supported Karen's fabricated standards. Determined to uncover the truth, the homeowner submitted a Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, request to the United States Postal Inspection Service. The response made it official. There was no enforcement division under the name used by the men, no record of compliance operations in the neighborhood, and no connection to any local citizen acting as a postal liaison. The letter confirmed that only authorized USPS personnel or federal agents could conduct official inspections or issue postal warnings, and impersonating such officers was a federal offense. Armed with this confirmation, the homeowner installed discrete security cameras around their property. Within days, the footage captured something shocking. The same two men, previously posing as enforcement officers, were seen arriving early in the morning at Karen's property. They exited her garage in plain clothes and were later recorded changing into their uniforms, badges, tactical vests, and all, before walking down the street to begin their so-called inspections. Additional footage showed Karen handing them papers and pointing toward specific homes. It became clear that the operation was not only unauthorized but orchestrated directly from Karen's home. The homeowner's cameras also recorded conversations in which the fake officers practiced lines, adjusted their clothing for appearance, and coordinated arrival times. The footage, along with the FOIA response, formed a solid body of evidence. The homeowner compiled everything into a timeline and shared it with trusted neighbors, some of whom had also started questioning the legitimacy of the officers. What had once been dismissed as overzealous neighborly behavior was now revealed to be a calculated and illegal scheme. The stage was set for exposure, and the community was finally ready to bring the entire operation to light. With undeniable footage and official confirmation in hand, the targeted homeowner compiled all evidence into a comprehensive report. The material included video clips, FOIA documents, timestamps, and audio recordings, all demonstrating the coordination between Karen and the fake postal enforcement officers. This evidence was anonymously submitted to both the local police department and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. At the same time, a heavily edited version of the footage was uploaded to a popular community watchdog forum, where it quickly gained attention. Within hours, the post began circulating across social media platforms, drawing thousands of views and comments. The story's unusual mix of petty power tripping, impersonation of federal agents, and the absurdity of a mailbox mandate made it go viral. Viewers from across the country were shocked by the audacity of the scheme and praised the homeowner's effort to document and expose the fraud. The online pressure prompted an immediate investigation by real postal inspectors. Within days, a team arrived in the neighborhood to review the evidence and interview residents. The investigation confirmed the impersonation of federal personnel, and local law enforcement joined the case to address additional charges related to trespassing, harassment, and fraudulent documentation. It was soon revealed that the two fake officers were relatives of Karen, neither of whom had any affiliation with any law enforcement or federal agency. Charges were filed against all three individuals. Karen faced multiple counts of conspiracy, false impersonation, and harassment, while her accomplices were charged with impersonating law enforcement and engaging in deceptive practices. The criminal investigation halted all further activity related to the mailbox enforcement claims, and all previously distributed notices were officially deemed fraudulent. Karen's reputation collapsed overnight. Neighbors who had once tolerated her overreach now distanced themselves publicly. Community members organized meetings to prevent similar future incidents, pushing for better communication channels and protective measures against harassment. Karen was removed from local social media groups, and several residents filed restraining orders and civil complaints against her and her co-conspirators. The neighborhood, once tense and confused, regained its calm. The fraudulent campaign that began with fake laws and fake authority was dismantled through truth documentation and community solidarity. What remained standing, unchanged, and now symbolic, were the very mailboxes she had tried so hard to control. Backhand Index pointing right for more outrageous neighborhood stories and shocking exposes. Subscribe to Expect Stories, where truth always trumps fiction.